Greetings, Professor Thompson here, and I'm going to show you how to hack a massive lit review and visualize whole literature bodies in a very convenient way using Web of Science data and VosViewer. And so we have to first begin, what is social network analysis and bibliometrics? Then a tutorial on how to download the Web of Science data from the Auburn Library portal, and then how to visualize this data in VosViewer using bibliometric, co-citation, and keywords. And so when we think about social network analysis, it's a process of investigating social structures using networks and graph theory. In this case of bibliometrics, that means citations analyses. We're really doing a citation exploration here using SNA. Oftentimes we characterize network structures in terms of nodes, in this case authors, keywords, key publications, and then ties in the forms of edges, links, or shared citations. And so we're going to be connecting shared keywords and authors and publications using this to get at a larger structure of the research field. And lastly, it emerged in sociology to visualize these structures. However, it is quickly spread to many other disciplines. And so we're going to be using Web of Science data from Thomson Reuters Institute. It was founded by Eugene Garfield back in the 50s, 60s, really took off in the 70s and pioneered the field of bibliometrics. And we're going to focus on the core collection, starting from 1900 to current. And so bibliometric coupling is a way of linking these nodes between two articles. It's the number of shared citations between two articles. So if document A cites documents C, D, and E, and document B does as well, they have a shared link strength of 3. This link strength represents calculated centrality, and it's good for looking at recent studies over the past 20 to 30 years. It really helps give a sense of what the field currently looks like. This is helpful if, say, you were preparing for a qualifying exam. And it's referred to as a retrospective assessment because it's looking backwards at what has been cited before it. And so this is the inverse of co-citation. Notice that it flips the direction here. The frequency within two documents being cited together by another document. So documents C, D, and E both cite A and B, and as a result, documents A and B share a link strength of 3. This citation number of references in the document really help get a sense of more of a historical or kind of the canonical classical studies in a field, and it goes back further over time, as we will see. This is also referred to as a forward-looking assessment, given the documents can still grow and share increased number of citations with time. So you're going to want to begin by going to Auburn's library webpage, lib.auburn.edu. Go ahead and log into your account and get that out of the way. And then just here, you're going to want to navigate to databases. There's dozens of different options, but since we're focusing on strict social science research, you're going to look for Web of Science here under W. Sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher. It's pretty expansive. And so when you arrive here, there are other collections within Web of Science, but we're going to focus on the core collection. You can also limit the parameters to the number of years. If you're, say, writing a qualifying exam paper, it might be more helpful to focus on the more recent 5 years, or if there's a particular range in mind. And we'll go ahead and focus on a segregation. You can add a lot of different types of searches. You can do the year published, publication name, author name, if you want to look over one person thoroughly. You also have other search identifiers here, like DOI, editors of journals. I also really do like publication names, so you could do like rural sociology, for example, and just stay within that single journal. But we'll start off broad for now and kind of narrow our parameters from there. And so we see it's a massive list, far too many, actually, to start off. And we see that aquaculture and other studies of ecology and biopsychology, this is way outside our field. Alloys and compounds, so apparently a lot of other fields use the term segregation. So what we're going to want to do is come down here and start limiting our parameters in this left side search box. First, just limit it to peer-reviewed articles. There's still 114,000, so that's still way too big. We'll then come here to Web of Science categories. Really, this is like disciplinary fields. go ahead and click that and take a look at the list. Political science is of interest, demography, economics definitely, geography, sociology is definitely of interest. Let's say social science interdisciplinary. This should be a pretty solid start, and we'll come down here to refine. And so we see that it's limited, it's substantially down to just 600 pages. Make sure that the article is refined. We don't want an abstract coming up, that's not of use to us. And then I would actually sort by time cited to get a sense of who's at the top of the field rather than just the most recent. Oh, wow. We see Joan Ecker's Gender and Society Theory of Gendered Organizations being cited 2,500 plus times. That's impressive. Also see Massey from Geography coming up at the top of the list. So this list is looking much better now. We see that a lot are in the California system, others in Pennsylvania, and then SUNY, New York, and then North Carolina. So that's looking more about what we'd expect. I find it's helpful for writing the data sections of studies and policy briefs to use these analyzed results to get a sense of your real data sample. This helps fill things out. So we see sociologies first, followed by geography and economics. We also see urban planning, environmental and ethnic studies coming up. So this is looking much better. The total counts here are very helpful for writing. And you can also break it down further by publication years. Sometimes you can do a bar graph if you find that helpful. You can screenshot those and just put them in kind of early writings to help you get moving. And also citation report here is pretty helpful. Gives you kind of a sense of total number of publications and their number of the number of times they've been cited. We do see that research on segregation is generally increasing. Over time, we do see kind of a steady increase, especially over the last few years. 2020 is still going on, so we'll see this most likely continue. It's quite helpful actually for writing up such things. And so once you have a good limit on what you're looking for and you think your parameters about what you'd expect, you come up here to export. And there's a few different ways that you can do this. You're going to want to navigate to other file formats. And now you can only export 500 at a time. And that can be a real headache, especially considering that there's far more than 500. So you're going to need to break it up into pieces. If you have a large one, if you have a smaller one, that works too. I like to do full record and cited references because that makes it so I can then use it for historical analysis down the road. And then for other one, you can do two different options. The first is bib text here, and the other is plain text. I personally like plain text. Okay, so we'll go ahead and save that first file. And then if you do have more, do it again. You come back to X. You can only do 500 at a time, so 501, 1000. Remember to do full record and cited references. And really just do this over and over until you have all the ones that are of interest. It can get a bit redundant when you're working with really big data sets. That said, it is free, which is nice that you're not being charged per search. I'll just do the top 2,000 for now. Okay, and so effectively got the data accessed off Web of Science to begin mapping in VosViewer. And so if you haven't already, you're going to want to go ahead and download VosViewer. It's an open source bibliometric citation analysis tool. It's open source, which is really beneficial because we can see the specific mathematical algorithms they're using. And also, it's just really pretty and polished. I've used a few in my different research approaches. I've used VosViewer actually in 4 now. So this is a pretty cool little software package. It's really light. It's not required too much heavy lifting. And then it also has a sister companion tool called SitNet Explorer to go back historically. And so you're going to want to go to the download page and then go ahead and install that. And so from here, you go ahead and open up VosViewer and you get this. It looks pretty simple out the gate, which is good. Down here, you're going to see the actual citations of the ones you're using, and then density visualizations. But let's go ahead by uploading the data into the file. So you come over here to create. There's a few different settings. We're going to be using bibliometric data. Notice it here, it says Web of Science file type. You can also do other text data type ones, but we'll focus on this for now. Go ahead and navigate to your file. Since I did all 4, it does slow it down a little bit, but this is where we decide what kind of map we want to make. Bibliographic coupling is one direction versus co-citation if they cite each other, and how central they become. Co-authorship is really just mapping the field of different authors. I'm going to go ahead and begin with a bibliographic coupling of just different documents. I'm not going to break it up by author, and I'm going to use a full count method. There are 2,000, as we exported, coupled links. The documents with the largest number of links will be selected. How many do you want to do? So if you just want to do the top 500 to really narrow the field, that's helpful. I'm going to go ahead and do all 2,000. It'll take a little longer and hopefully won't crash, but this is very helpful right here. When you create the map, it went ahead and already listed all the top ones in the field for you based on how frequently they're bibliographically coupled. So we see that South 2005 is number 1 with South 97. So these are South's at the top of the field in many regards, and also here coming up again for another 2005 article. We see that there's quite a few big names. This is a very high coupling rate, which means that they're highly influential. We'll go ahead and visualize that. So it turns out that roughly 33 of them are not linked to the network. Do I want to drop them off? I'll say go ahead and drop them, because if they're not tied, they're not going to be of as much importance. And voila, here's all the different works using segregation as a keyword. We do see different clusters, kind of this red offshoot over here. Most of these look like they're AJS or ASR, really top of the field sociological publications. However, if we switch over here, we see more kind of demography and city and planning and other top sociology journals. And so you can also control the different visualization settings. You can make the dots bigger, further influence to really see who's at the top. You can also bring it down. You can also change just some basic visualizations, turning them into frames if you prefer to make it more legible. You can also increase the number of lines to kind of map all this. Let's jump up. And so one of the coolest things about this is that you can hover, and here at the bottom, you can see the authors, the title of the publication, where it was published, the volume and issue. And let's say we want to look at South's 1997 work rate, right in this area. So once you're hovered over it, escape distressed neighborhoods, individual, community, and metropolitan influences. You can actually click it and it'll pop up just like that. So you can go ahead and download PDFs. Might have to log in to get it, but nevertheless, it takes you straight to the article. I think that this is very helpful, especially when trying to navigate a whole sea of data. But this also gives you the abstract, so you can look at what exactly education, essentially the key findings and an overview of the article. And so you can screenshot it directly, but I find it's helpful to go ahead and hide the sides and the bottom as much as possible to get a sense of what you're going to be laying out. And then come here to screenshot options. Definitely optimize labeling, skip the border, scaling. Sometimes going up higher is helpful, but you can't overshoot the mark. I normally go with 200 for the first one to see how it does. And voila. You can start to see that there's this lone one out to the side, which is kind of strange, but we can remove that if need be. The different items here tell you who's in which cluster, which ones ended up where. These are really big clusters of the 7. Cluster 7 is quite small, but clusters 1, 2, and 3 are quite huge. For sake of analysis, you can adjust the parameters here to try and get the clustering to look a little different. You can also use density visualization and find that the 2 key pockets are here and here. This seems to be a little bit more conceptual from what I can gather. More concepts of segregation and measures and complex discussions of that, where this one seems to be more drivers and kind of applied planning studies. So this is helpful. This is the type of graphic you could generate this and put this into a study as your analysis. And furthermore, it helps kind of give you a sense of the field and identify research gaps. I'm a big fan of research gaps because it is a great way of framing kind of the missing puzzle piece to your problem. And we see that there's a really big gap right here in the middle. I mean, you can even see it in the density visualization that it gets much colder right in this area. So I wonder, what about this topic maybe is missing in this area, and how could I frame it as such? Therefore, you're shown as making a contribution to the field by kind of bridging the unearthed areas. And then others prefer to go off in other trajectories and do offshoots. That is something that my mentor used to do at the University of Florida. And so while this one was helpful, I want to go ahead and make another one. I want to focus on keywords this time. And you can keep everything the same all the way until you get to what type of counting method you want to do. So I'm actually going to go with a co-citation of shared references. I want to see who's the historical ones in the field. Wow. So you can limit the threshold here again. I like to get it somewhere right between 1,000 and 5,000. So I'm going to keep it somewhat big and go with 4 required co-citations to be included. And I'm going to want all 5,000 of them. And we see Doug Massey coming to the top with the apartheid segregation and Wilson's at disadvantage piece, Massey again. So by using a different approach of, rather than who cites who, shared citations, this co-citation is shared ones. So these are normally older. This is more backward or historical facing. And this helps write a literature review so you can see who was kind of canonical in the field and maybe isn't at the top of it right now, as Bibliometrics points out, really focuses on the last 20 years. As you'll be able to tell with these other citations, they go back much further. Wow. You see some 1970s, 68, 69. So yeah, this is much more historical in character, 84, 90, 87. And these are big. You can look at the items again to see who's in which cluster and which are as important as others. But we do see, oh wow, 1955. Otis Dudley Duncan, wow, America ASR. So this is really interesting for a variety of reasons. Kept the same size variation and label variation, but we once again do see a gap here. This would be a cool gap to try and bridge because it has the historical roots, much like the other one. A lot of similarities here. You could generate this as a part for an analysis. I'm gonna bring down the size of these labels though, because that massy one looks huge and it's making it hard to read. When you do export these, you want to export them as high as resolution as possible in the form of screenshots or screenshot options, and you want to set it to PNG as high resolution as possible. This is very cool though. We do see this subfield down here, which is interesting, and this green scattering. I wonder if that has more of a gender dynamic or geography, because I see a combination of different words in here. So I'm a big fan of visualized thinking. It helps me get a sense of where different influences have kind of come from. We do see some technical things in here, some theory mixing in. So it's this would be very helpful for writing a literature review. And for the last one, I'll come over here and create one last one real fast, keeping all the same settings. And I'm just going to go with co-occurrence of keywords. I want to see what segregation looks like in terms of keywords. What other words are oftentimes used to describe segregation? I would predict that segregation would be in the middle. And since it's keywords, I'm open to having a whole lot of them, so I simplify it to only one. Actually, 4,000 might be much. Let's go with 2. We'll take all 1,500. Segregation, number 1 by far, but that's what you'd expect considering it's the source of generating our data. But race comes up, and then residential segregation, really just an extension of the former. Most residential studies of segregation seem to take place in the United States. We do see a lot of other gender things and discrimination, sexual segregation, women, patterns, work, earnings, migration, mobility, poverty. This is interesting. And this, I would without a doubt have to use the keywords in a publication. It summarizes the overall themes much better than just general names and journal article titles. But we see, once again, a series of different color clusters that are really interested. So segregation and residential segregation pretty much on top of each other at this point, but mobility being very central as well. This is where network science comes in, talking about centrality and impact factors and bridging versus degree centrality. Sex segregation gets its own area. Gender, work, gap, devaluation, glass escalator. This is a feminist cluster right here. This is very interesting. We do see far more, this purple seems to be like the offshoots up here, and you see Michigan, social movements, interracial friendships. This is ethno-nationalism, participation, mathematics. So you're getting some kind of offshoots here, but you also get some interesting clusters down in here. And you can, since this is so clustered, you can really play with the settings. Density visualizations are sometimes helpful. Spatial assimilation, SES. It does help to zoom in further and further because the quality, so a lot of these are quite small, suggesting that many studies don't invoke all of them. But we do see migration and race being really close to segregation here. This is interesting. This could be definitely used for a study. And this red cluster alone, I would love to explore and maybe pick out the top 10 articles from it, summarize them, and really begin drafting my lit review and research hypotheses from there. And so this is pretty much the strategy I like to use as a visual thinker for summarizing 5,000 or 2,000 articles and their various impacts. We do see that it goes up much higher. So this is just a tool. You don't have to use it. That said, I personally think it's very helpful in ways of integrating network science into studies of bibliometrics and citation analysis. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me I'm happy to help. And with that, stay well.